guys, what's happening? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around, today I'm going to show you how to make a techno kick drum rumble inside of Beatmaker 3.
Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
The first thing we'll need to do is load up a kick drum. I'm going to start by loading up a sample from my reflective sample pack, but you could load up a kick drum from any sample packs you've got. Or you could, support a brother and check out my reflective sample pack. We're going to go into the kicks folder. We're going to go into Dean's personal kick drums. I usually like to write in the key of F minor, so let's change it up today and pick a kick drum in the, with a root note that's tuned to the key of G. That's kind of a big punchy one. Let's try that one today. We'll just drag that onto a pad here. There's quite a few steps to this process, so what we're going to do first is we're just going to go ahead and start ourselves a 4 on the floor kick drum pattern. We'll double click here in the song mode, and we'll double click in this pattern so that we can get our kick drums here. And let's see. Let's go ahead and put our tempo up to like a nice techno tempo. A really common tempo for techno is 125 BPM. So let's go ahead and set ours to 125 BPM. Go back to the song mode and put the loop brace on there. Fantastic. You'll notice that I have the launch control out today as well. This is going to be a pretty involved process, so stick with me. Quick side quest here, guys. We're going to go to a website called musiccalculator.com. Musiccalculator.com. I highly recommend you bookmark this website. And we're going to click on delay timing. And what this is going to allow us to do is this is going to get us a millisecond that's going to be in time with our BPM. And we're going to use that to determine our reverb pre-delay milliseconds. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. Stick with me. So let's see here. Make sure we're in delay timing. Okay, BPM delay timing. Fantastic. We're going to put in our BPM, which is 125. And I usually like to sync this to like a 32nd or a 64th note. So we'll put in 164. Okay, and this is giving us our milliseconds of 30 exactly, 30 milliseconds. So we're going to need that number in just a minute. Hang with me. All right, we'll go back into Beatmaker 3. And I'll adjust the camera again. All right, and now I'll explain why we got that number. We'll go over to the mixer section, and on the auxiliary return 1, on the send 1, let's add an effect. We'll add a 6-band EQ, and let's just make this from a band shelf to a high pass, right? And we'll just cut off a little bit of these lows, maybe up to about 600 hertz. This is going to prevent any super low frequencies from coming through to this reverb effect that I'm about to drop on. And here's where that number comes in handy. On the pre-delay amount, we're going to change that to the number that, that we just figured out, which was 30 milliseconds. Now, if you're doing techno at, say, 122 BPM or 120 BPM or even a higher BPM, that millisecond pre-delay on your reverb is going to be a little bit different number, which you can find easily through that musiccalculator.com website. But here's why we did this. Basically, we're going to create a really large wash of reverb using the kick drum as a source. Now, just follow and stick with me on this for a sec. We're going to send that kick drum to our send. Let's bring some more of those lows back into here, actually. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I've got the cutoff on the lows here, taking off anything to our reverb send below about 100 hertz, right? And now we'll just adjust this reverb to taste. Getting there. Excellent. Okay, and here's the gimmick. Now what we can do is we can solo this reverb send and we can render that out. And what we're doing is we're rendering out just this effect sound and not the kick drum itself. I'll show you how we're going to do that. What let's do is let's get like 4 bars of this instead of 1 bar. So we're going to repeat, 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 and extend that loop brace out. And now we've got, a 4-bar pattern. So when I export this audio out, let's go back into the mixer. We're going to solo that return track. So we're not getting the actual kick drum coming through. We're just getting this big wash of, room reverb that's in sync with our tempo. And what let's do is, we'll go to export, and we're going to export the master. We're going to start on bar 1. We're going to do that for 4 bars. That's our song. Fine, whatever. And we don't need to normalize this. We want a 24-bit wave. That's great. Let's start the export. It's going to tell us where that's available. Fantastic. Now we're going to import that rumbly reverb right back in over this kick drum. But the first thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to unsolo the auxiliary 1, and we'll need to pull the send down, and we should just have our clean kick drum now. Fantastic. Now what we're going to do is we're going to import that reverb rumble that we just exported. We're going to bring that right back in. Bring up our pads here, and we'll go to our import menu. Our exports menu. And that's nice. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the pattern mode. Let's double click to highlight all 4 of those so we can merge those into one pattern. Then we can just double click on this pattern, and we've dropped our reverb rumble onto pad number 2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just drag out, and we'll hold down a note so that we'll hold down that sample and play back for the full 4 bars here. And now let's start sculpting this kick drum and that reverb rumble to go together. Here's what we have right now. But what we want is we don't want the reverb rumble to override the kick drum. We want it to sit beneath the kick drum and have our kick drum still be the main driving force of our track. So what let's do is on the actual, reverb render from the kick drum, let's change this from a 1-shot to hold mode. And this way, now we have control over how it plays back. Let's bring the release down on this a little bit as well. Let's bring it down to, say, about 9 milliseconds. We'll continue sculpting these together, so I'll hit play and adjust the volume of our reverb rumble. Get it a little bit smoother in line with the kick drum already. So we're going to sidechain this rumble to the kick drum so that when the kick drum hits, it'll duck the volume of this rumble part just a little bit, and the kick drum will punch through and still be like the leading factor of our mix. What we'll do is we'll click on the Effects tab, and we want to bring a sidechain up just to pad number 2, which houses the reverb render that we put out. We'll click on A1 up here, where it's next to the bank, and we'll choose Select Pad. We're going to put that on the weirdly labeled just, big long session sample here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the dynamics processor right there, right? And we're going to choose a sidechain input. We're going to select a pad, and we're going to choose the kick drum here, okay? And what that's going to do is now every time the kick drum hits, it's going to duck the volume of this, reverb rumble by just the amount that we'll set now. I like to usually use a sidechain ratio of 4:1. And this is also where this release millisecond is going to come in handy for us looking at, millisecond tempo sync up on musiccalculator.com, because we're going to set this release time to 30 milliseconds as well. We're going to bring the attack down all the way to 0, as low as it can go, because we want this ducking to happen the exact millisecond that the kick drum hits. And what we'll do is we'll just adjust the threshold until we see a little bit of ducking action happening here in the meter, which we can already see happening. Now, so the more I pull this threshold down, the more extreme ducking that we'll hear, and I'll show you that now. One of the things that I think is really neat is to assign this threshold to a macro, and that way in real time as you're jamming, you can change the amount of pump, and you can change the amount of intensity on that pump in real time. So let's do that now. Let's assign this launch control real quick. We're going to go up to our menu and click on the gear, right? We're going to scroll down until we get to the macro controls. I'm going to touch one of them, and I'm going to choose a knob on my controller. It's going to assign that to macro 1. I'll do the same thing for macro 2. Now, I've just got this plugged into my USB audio hub from Novation, which is the way we're getting audio and MIDI in and out of the iPad. Macro 3. Macro 4. Macro 5. And that's fine for today. We're not going to need a whole bunch of macros. That'll be plenty. So what we'll do to be able to bring in the pump with the macro is we're going to double click on that threshold knob in our sidechain compressor, and we're going to assign this. Double click on that. We're going to click macro controls, and we're going to assign this to a macro. This could be any of the 16 available macros, but we're just going to choose macro 1 for now. And now, when I, move my controller, we'll have control over the pump. And what we can do is if we click on the 3 dots next to that, we can choose how much is the minimum amount when the knob is at 0, and how much is at a maximum amount when the knob is at a full amount. And I don't want there to never be any pump, so I'm not going to make this a 0, and we'll just press play and adjust this to taste. So currently, this is with the knob all the way down. And now if I turn this up, it should increase the dramaticness of the pump effect. I feel like it goes up just a little bit too high to be pleasant, so we're going to bring the maximum amount down, and we'll try again. In my opinion, I really want to be able to have free movement from 0 to, all the way up, which would be like, 127 on these knobs. So I try to really define the amount that the knobs move when I do this programming. Again, so here's with the minimum amount. That's pretty good. And now as your track is playing, if your section is a little bit more intense, you might bring that pumping up. If your section is a little bit more chilled, you might, bring that all the way down. Now you might have heard a tiny little bit of, inconsistency as the sample loops through itself over and over again. And if you look really close here at the beginning of the sample, you might notice that it looks a little bit different as well. And that's because when we rendered the sample out, it took a little bit for the reverb to actually, fully catch. So what we're going to do is we're going to change from 0 snap to grid snap, and we're going to go ahead and trim this sample directly in half. And that way it's going to give us a more consistent looping. We'll click trim, and then we're going to go ahead and hold this plus button and zoom all the way in. We'll take our snap off, and we'll do a select, just that very tiny little bit at the beginning. We'll do a process, and we'll do a fade in. Okay, take select off. And now we can, let's go ahead and save this in our, same directory for now. That's fine. And what this has done is given us a 2-bar loop, though, rather than a 4-bar loop. So in our MIDI down here, we'll need to change that as well. There we go. And now it's really seamless when it loops back around. Excellent. Take the time to do those tiny little bit of extra steps and really tighten everything up, guys. We can still take the sculpting of this into further directions. Let's do, let's automate some filter movement here. We can, on the reverb layer, let's see if we can zoom out there. Double click the cutoff on a low pass filter, and we can assign that to say macro 2. And then we can adjust the minimum and maximum values. So at our minimum value, when the knob is not turned at all, we'll have it, so that it's not being affected by the filter. But as we turn the knob, it's going to filter this down to, say, right around 300 hertz, I find to be pretty good. Let's try that. See what that sounds like. Cool. So now we can adjust the amount of pump with the first knob, and we can adjust the low pass cutoff of the second knob. In fact, let's change that to low pass. And in fact, since we had such good results with the low pass, let's go ahead and do the same thing and take it a step further by adding a high pass filter as well. What let's do is, no, let's take away this bit crusher here. We'll put a filter in on our layer effects tab. We'll make sure that's assigned to a high pass filter. See if it, wasn't here, it would look like this. And we'll just assign a new effect. We'll choose the filter, choose high pass, right? We can leave the resonance there for now, and maybe we'll bring the cutoff down to minimum. Double click that, click macro, and assign that to maybe macro 3. Then if we click the macro section over here, we can adjust how much this is going to affect it. So maybe at minimum value, it's not going to affect it at all. And maybe when we turn that knob up, it's going to like shave those lows off to about, 700 hertz. Let's see what that sounds like. So there's our full rumble. You can low pass it down a little, and then maybe for like a turnaround you could start high passing it out. In fact, let's change this. This is high pass. You get the idea. Having the ability to sculpt the rumble like this in real time is really useful, and you can do all sorts of other experimentation and put delays and lo-fi effects like bit crushers and maybe an overdrive on that rumble, assign those to knobs and tweak those in and out during your mix as well. Maybe bring up some distortion and overdrive in a real intense section of your track, tame all that stuff down for low, mellow sections of your track. I hope maybe this has inspired you to get your techno kick rumble on, guys. Until next time, thanks for watching. Hey guys, it takes a lot of work and time to make all these videos, and I really appreciate the support I've gotten so far. If you want to help support the work that I do in this channel, please consider checking out some of my sample packs over on Electronisounds.com, or maybe become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and you can get yourself some bonus downloads as well as supporting creative content here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, guys.